Oh my gosh, please, for the love of God, random generator, don't give me any whammies. Alright, let's see what I get. No whammies, no whammies, no whammies, and you are 9. Alright, well, as you can see here, these are my choices, and we have selected Shin Robo by dint of complete random guessing. So I'm going to cross this off the list.
Change getters.
There we go. So, tell me if there's something you want me to put on this list in the comments, and I will most definitely make a note of it. If there's space.
The truly golden age of giant robots is far behind us, if recent offerings are any indication. But what if you take one of the forerunners of the genre and throw some of that sweet, sweet reboot money at it? The result is mixed, but generally pretty good. New Robo or Shin Robo could be generously considered a reboot or a remake, but what it really is a strange compression of all the Robo stuff that had come before it. Keeping in mind that there are 2 full TV series of the original Robo, the spin-off Robo Go, Robo Armageddon, which is based off the manga, and Shin Robo vs. New Robo, all contributing to the giant continuity snarl, in addition to the various manga series, which are all wildly different from them, it's easy to see how scrapping all the background info and going full reboot might have sounded like a good plan. Also, I apologize to every English teacher I ever had for that excruciatingly long run-on sentence. So while they take elements from all the series, it really is pretty much just a fresh start. The plot is essentially this. Oni bad, Robo mostly good. They fight. The problem is that the pilots of Robo, the titular transforming robot, are not exactly the kind of people you'd want accepting medals at a ceremony. Ryoma Nagare is the pilot of Getter Eagle, the red part of Getter Robo, and the head pilot of Getter 1. Getter 1 is the most common variant of the Getter Robo mecha, being the one with the most press. It's largely unchanged from its original incarnation, though it's bulked up and made more menacing here. The original Getter Robo was kind of a chubby fellow. This one looks like he's hit the gym in the intervening years. If Ryoma himself remembers a time when he wasn't just beating the hell out of people with his bare hands, he certainly hasn't said anything about it. And that's mostly his character drive. Kick everybody's ass. Hayato Jin is somehow less of an agreeable sort, known primarily for being a psychotic terrorist and slashing people's faces off with his bare hands. His interest in the Getter Rays is what lands him in the seat of Getter Jaguar and into the cockpit of Getter 2. Getter 2 is designed primarily for ground combat, or so the show states. What it's really good at is burrowing and moving extremely fast. It's gotten a fairly substantial redesign, sporting a much more impressive-looking claw, and no longer looking like a cowboy on stilts. The final piece of the robot puzzle is Benkei Musashibo, who's a new creation for Shin Robo. Musashi in the original work was a fat bloke with no pants who was a comic relief. He was replaced in Robo G by Benkei, who is also a husky fella who dresses like a baseball umpire. What's the difference between him and this new Benkei?
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Benkei in Shin Robo is a more serious character, being a Buddhist monk, but he also got to that point by being a gluttonous brute of a man, known for beating people bloody and causing havoc. He pilots the Getter Bear and takes over Getter 3, which is allegedly supposed to work underwater. The huge tank treads seem to indicate differently, but it seems a-okay both underwater and on land. Getter 3 has also had the most work done on it, looking much less like the half-finished design it originally sported, and more like a force that could throw around mountain-sized monsters. Standing against them are the Oni, which should be reasonably familiar to longtime otaku as these weird critters with horns and tiger print togas. Or, lum. Sadly, these aren't space aliens with marriage on the brain, these are monsters who turn people they kill into mindless beasts. Luckily, it doesn't seem to bother our protagonist much. Oh. Right, I probably should have mentioned, as far as robot shows go, this is pretty messy. People get limbed, Oni get their brains bashed out. It's quite gory. And it's awesome. The character designs are made to squash and stretch about enough that it's not too offensive when they go off model for the action scenes, but it is noticeable. But as much energy as they have going through this animation, it's forgivable because I'd rather have dynamic animation than stiff character models. The somewhat antiquated style of character designs, you'll notice no big googly eyes or super handsome dudes here, really jives well with the story, which is a pretty ugly and twisted beast. So, not for nothing, but the story involves giant robots. If you're not really into giant robots, there's a fair chance you're not going to like Shin Robo. Sad but true. What the hell is wrong with you, man? However, what it doesn't predominantly feature is fan service, obnoxious shots of panties, cutesy-bootsy anime bullshit with women who look and act like they're stretched-out 10-year-olds. This is an anime that's designed to punch demons and chew gum, and it is all out of gum. If you're really tired of the usual nonsense that anime has to offer, and don't mind the fact that it has about as much brains as that dumb meathead at the gym that calls everybody brah, you're looking at a good time. Jun Kawagoe is the director responsible for this, and all of the other recent Getter Robo outings, starting with most of Getter Robo Armageddon way back in '98. Mercifully, he didn't have to contend with the comical amount of production fuck-ups that almost vaporized that series, and would go on to direct X-Driver, Cyborg 009, and Mazinkaiser SKL, among other things. And with the production of this video, he will be helming Cyborg 009 vs. Devilman as well. So with that in mind, I think the properties he likes to adapt are usually in good hands.
This has all the hallmarks of a reboot of a classic.
The characters are taken to their rather illogical extremes, but it also faithfully recreates the tension between the characters as they push the envelope further and further. For more on the Getter Robo series, please watch The History of Mecha Episode 3. It's almost like Kawagoe understands the characters he's adapting, which is more than I can say for a lot of directors here in the West. Since they're fighting Oni instead of the
Dinosaur Empire!
Yeah, that. The monsters aren't as simple as putting some armor on a big lizard and calling it a day. The result is a whole lot of odd monster designs that do their intended purpose in the show, but aren't particularly memorable. But then it doesn't really detract at all from the show itself because the monsters are simply a means to an end. The thing of it is, the monsters in these shows are important, but they're not that important. They exist as an antagonist and are usually built around a theme, but aside from being a showcase for showing how tough the protagonists are, and showing off their teamwork for some new weapon, the whole point is to watch them die. This is why the usually unforgivable sin of reusing the same monsters a few times in this series is actually perfectly passable. Which leads me into the second phase of the story. So once they get settled in and all the characters together, two massive questions remain to be answered. Where do the Oni come from, and what in the flaming blue hell are Getter Rays that seem to be so very good at powering our robot? In the original anime, the Getter Rays could charitably be called cosmic radiation, but it's more like magic, which conveniently makes the Mechasaurus monsters fall to bits. In this iteration, there's a very clear analog between Getter Rays and nuclear radiation, but it's not perfect by any stretch. But the analogy gets much messier, because the Getter Rays are affected by the will to fight, and it's implied that the Getter machines are some sort of inevitable end to society. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but the imagery associated with it should make you think of Godanner, and other Getter Robo shows, of course. So Getter Rays are some manner of special radiation that can be harnessed in such a way that it kills Oni and powers robots, but only with the right people sitting at the helm. Which leads me to the second arc of this 13-episode series. Alright, are you sitting down for this one? They go back in time to the Heian period and fight Abe no Seimei, who's being controlled or is controlling the Oni. If this was a Western work, they would have just traveled to medieval England to go and punch Merlin in the balls. Yeah, dwell on that for a while. This all ties into another Ken Ishikawa work that features Abe no Seimei, but the information on it is scattered at best. This whole arc is absolutely bizarre, but it does go to show how resourceful the pilots can be, and it helps Ryomo rack up a kill count in the hundreds without even breaking a sweat. After this point they have to deal with the aftermath and the head of the Oni, but that's worth seeing on your own. This is the part where I would explain the problems with acquiring this show, but as I was writing this review, seriously, hand to God, Discotek Media announced that they were going to re-release it in 2016. So I'm going to give you the production background, but you will still be able to acquire this show. It's going to have to wait a couple of months.
I don't know what you folks are talking about. I'm not a shill for Discotech Media.
悲しみの向こうへとたどり着ける
Apparently, this, along with a few other shows, were so ludicrously expensive to license, one hypothetical figure puts it at nearly $1 million, that it helped to tank Genion's financials to the breaking point. Heat Guy J was another alleged culprit, which is said to have cost as much as Full Metal Alchemist to license, but with none of the success. But as of this production, I don't have any solid evidence to back this up. It's strange, too, to consider that veteran voice actors Lex Lang, Kirk Thornton, and Michael McConaughey take on their roles with all the intensity of someone slowly nodding off. But then this was Genion, and if they'd wanted to crank up the intensity, who knows how many committees the voice work would have had to go through before it got approved. Remember, voice actors aren't the ones who make the final calls, it's the director. So even if Lex Lang had bellowed, "Change! Get to one!" with the same intensity as his Japanese counterpart, it might not have made the cut anyway. Voice acting is just a son of a bitch. And anime fans of the modern age should thank their lucky fucking stars that we have it so damn good. Honestly, watching this makes me look at other modern anime in a dimmer light for being so utterly dull and static. Getter Robo's color palettes are bright and vibrant, and it has a complete lack of self-awareness that's so refreshing. This is what I want in a Super Robot show. I want fighting, I want screaming, I want Jam Project to do the music, and I want it to go so beyond the pale of reality that it can't be anything more than awesome. I don't want navel-gazing, I don't want fan service. I want robot smashing and friendship and saving the planet. And more than that, I don't want it to be an homage like Gurren Lagann. I want it to just be itself. That's Kawagoe's strength as a director. He lets the show be itself, and it is itself. Absolutely 100% unapologetically. But sadly, this was the last time that Ken Ishikawa would see his work animated. This OVA was released in 2004 and wrapped production in September of that year. Ishikawa, the original writer of Getter Robo, passed away in November of 2006. Even with a lackluster dub, the show itself is really a perfect starting point for figuring out if the robot genre is going to ring your bell. If Shin Getter Robo doesn't make you see the light, I guess there's always Gurren Lagann. Accept no substitutes, get Shin Getter Robo when it comes out in 2016.